Man, let's see. What kind of inspired you to become a writer? And you know what I'm saying? And I guess what's your big picture view of what you want to accomplish as a writer?
Absolutely. So I think, one of my favorite authors, probably my favorite, but definitely, top three is Robert Greene. He's, obviously the author of 48 Laws of Power. And I read his book, Art of Seduction, several years ago. I was a young man. And that was really the spark in me to say, I think I can do this too, because of the content that he was writing about, the subject matter, but the way he was just so bold in his statements. So that is what really sparked me to say, I think I can write too. And I always had a hinge for it, but I think after reading that book, I kind of made a choice that at some point in life, I will definitely write a book.
Word. So can you walk us through your writing process? How do you go about crafting a story or a novel, or whatever your I guess what do you think your intent is, like, while you're writing?
Absolutely. So and you just made a great point, because when I start my writing process, one of the number one things I do is I make sure that I do not read a book, any other book, right? I make sure I don't read any other book other than what I need to read out of it, right? So if I'm researching or if I'm looking at a particular book, I will only read the necessary 3 to 4, 5, 10 pages of the book, and then I put it down. Because I don't want to be too influenced by, like you said, any other writer. I don't really care about their style. I'm trying to 100% deliver me. So that's super important, right? That's one of the top things, actually. Then I have to go into, what do I want to accomplish with said book, right? So my first book is called Supernatural Confidence. I have to really sit down with myself and say, okay, what am I really trying to say here? What am I trying to deliver here? What am I trying to get people to see? So Supernatural Confidence is a lot about my own personal story of having confidence and building it. And of course, talking about the time that I did not have confidence, the times that I did not believe in myself, right? It even takes confidence to write a book. So that's also intertwined in the experience of them reading it. So I think number one is, don't be too influenced by any other writer, style, or what's popular at the time. I think number two is, asking yourself, what are you trying to accomplish here? What's your main goal? What's the thing you're trying to say to the people? Because, you can have a lot of thoughts. You can go in a lot of different directions. And that's something I also teach as far as when I do consultations, is that you can have 1,000 thoughts, but you need to have one main thought. You need to focus on that one main thought throughout the entire time of writing the book, because that's where you're going to draw inspiration from. What happens with a lot of authors is that they have 1,000 thoughts and they got 1,000 little notes around their house or their office or whatever, and it's all messy. So that's why they never complete the book, is because their body's being pulled in 1,000 different directions. They want to write about this. They don't know if should write about this. Should they mention this? Have one main thought about the book and then go from there, and then it'll start flowing.
So what do you think sets your writing apart from other authors in your genre?
Well, of course, I'm in self-help. That's the main genre that, I write in. Of course, I include stories within my books, but the overall objective and mission is to help someone within the stories I tell. I would say that probably the top thing that separates me is I'm not afraid to say things that other authors might be afraid to say, because I'm not necessarily trying to catch everybody. That's never been my goal. It's never been, my mission to say, oh, I'm for everybody. I definitely am. I feel like I'm an artist, because I feel like authors are artists. So I feel like I'm an artist that I'm for the people that's for me, if that makes sense. So I've never been the type to say, okay, I'm trying to sell my book is a general thing for everybody. No, my book is for who it's for. It's going to speak to whoever it speaks to. So I think the top thing that separates me is not being afraid to say the things that other authors are definitely probably going to hold back on. They're going to say, you know, that's offensive. You shouldn't say that. You know, of course I have rules that, you know, everything has to have structure. So I'm very structured in my writing, but as far as the content, you know, I can't necessarily worry about who am I offending, especially if I have a very genuine concern about the writer. You know, if I'm really trying to help the writer, then I must deliver the truth in what I'm saying. And of course, like I said, whoever it's for, they'll get it, they'll pick it up. Even if they don't pick it up that day they read it, maybe down the line, it'll come back to their brain, and then they'll be like, okay, I see what he was talking about, or I see what he meant.
Yeah, I think that's always the hardest part, is being personable. Like sometimes, you know, there's so many different communications. You got body language, you know, face-to-face communication. We're using the internet right now and somewhat having a face-to-face conversation, obviously. But it's not the traditional in-person, you know, but that's not a negative thing. It's just another medium. And what people read versus how they internalize it and then make whatever assumptions about the writer or the author of the thought is way different when you can read a person's body language and be able to talk to them in person to see how committed they are to the words they choose, right? Mm-hmm. And this is why I say, in most cases, you live in your feelings until you meet the facts. You know what I'm saying? Like you talked about your journey on a small level about confidence. You have to have confidence to do anything of value.
Right.
And regardless of the feedback, you still accomplish something, you know, that most people don't do, you know, in terms of write a book or either read a book. Yeah. So when you have your opinions and people disagree with you, you can kind of like look at them and say, hey man, whatever you want to be upset by, that's your choice. I made a choice to communicate my opinion on it. And somebody's going to have value. So I completely co-sign that your work is for the person that needs it. It's not for a specific demographic. The demographic is the person that needs it, because somebody needs to have somebody reflect their views of the world somewhere.
Right.
And if one person can pick it up, thousands will pick it up.
That's how it works, man. And just to add on to that point is, a book is a form of communication, right? So you're starting off with, yes, it's your words on pages, but then you're conveying your message once it's bought, right? No matter where it is in the world. So I look at it this way: the person that needs my book, they're walking around, maybe at that moment, they don't know they need the book. That doesn't mean that, you know, the book is useless. That's why I say that I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. And I think, you know, more people need to realize, you know, in this modern society, is that it's okay that you're not going to reach everybody. Everyone's not going to understand you at the same time.
Very true, man. Like, this is why I say all things are true, because it's true for your understanding.
Right.
The understanding you have right now is completely valid to how it applies to your life. And somebody can observe it and say, I wouldn't do that, but you can't go in and actually rearrange that person's life to configure that specific moment to your understanding. You know what I mean? It's just too many things that lead up to it. Like, you watch enough time travel movies and TV shows, you're like, let them have it. You just gotta let people live with what they understand, you know, and until they reach a point of intersection where they can actually take in somebody else's opinion, you know. Mm-hmm. How do you balance your creative vision with the expectations of your readers and publishers?
Oh, wow.
It's a little bit more detailed than the previous question, you know, so I'm gonna give you a second to marinate on that, you know. because I know it almost sounds identical, but like
Right.
there's some, I interpret the question, where like you don't want your vision altered, but you want your message to be communicated.
Right.
So,
I'm a blend it. I'm a blend a little bit of the last question, and then I'll get into this question, because you spoke about everybody has something to teach, and I think that's a very profound statement, because one time I was speaking and I was talking about that we dismiss people who have failed at something, right? We dismiss everybody who has failed at something, but what those people who have failed should do is they should teach what they what they failed at, right? So we always discourage people who have failed at something. We condemn them, we put them down, but those are some of the main people who should have the spotlight on them. The people who have failed at marriage, the people who have failed at relationships, the people who have failed at business, or even a book per se. Those are some of the main people who should have a platform to speak, because they probably could teach some of the things that they failed at to people who really, really need it. Now you talk about expectations with the creative vision. I mean, I think that you should always be cognizant of your audience. Be cognizant of who you're trying to reach, right? And why you're trying to reach them. A wise man once said, give people the chicken sandwich they want, right? So, you got to give the people what they're hungry for, definitely. And that you can do that in different ways. That's why I'm so keen on, when I do consultations with first-time authors, that's why I'm so keen on making sure that the cover, right, really conveys your message, but is also attractive. So we have to balance that out. Statistics say that 30% of your sales is going to come from the book cover alone. So you have to balance between, you having this creative vision and this unique message, but also, guess what? You also have to make it sexy, make the cover attractive, make it, look like something that someone wants to read. So I think it's about, have this creative vision, go wild, go crazy, but always be cognizant of what you're really, who you're trying to reach and what's going to be attractive to them. So it's like a volley. It's like the tennis ball going back and forth. It's a balance. One side can't dominate. I don't really think you can have a successful product if you always just keep doing everything that your quote unquote audience tell you to do. But at the same time, I don't think you can have a successful product if you don't care about what your audience is telling you, what they want to hear from you. So it's a balance. I don't really get too caught up in the expectations, because I think that you will suffer that way. And then you'll start writing another book that you didn't expect to write or even want to write. But am I, like I said, in the back of my mind, do I think about, okay, do people want to read this? Yes, of course. I have to be realistic. But I don't get too caught up in it. So I don't even, the word expectations, especially when I'm going through the writing process, it's kind of like a third tier word for me. It's there, it's in the room. We're not going to disrespect expectations, but we're not going to, make it the forefront.
I like the different elements that you brought up about, like, how you mix the expectations of yourself versus the audience that you're trying to reach, because it's a delicate dance, with maintaining your individuality and not being controlled by other people's expectations.
Right.
And I think very few people take that into consideration. Like, the person is an artist, so you're gonna have to, like, if you don't like what I wrote, go buy my old. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what you want to say, but,
right.
But you're like, I'll take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find the nice way to say, wait your turn. You know what I'm saying? Because I got a million ideas that are lined up, and it takes a lot for me to get focused to line them up as well. So how do you handle writer's block or other challenges that arise during the writing process?
Great question. So, and of course, I'm bringing up things that I also teach people that I consult as well. When I'm experiencing writer's block, the number one thing I do is acknowledge that I have writer's block, and I have to get to the bottom of why I have it. So when I have writer's block, I stop writing. Some people say you should keep writing, you should keep, pushing forward, keep pushing forward. I stop because there's a reason why my creative process is not raining how it usually does. And until I at least know the foundation of that, then I'm wasting everybody's time. So what I do is I believe that I just might take a day off. I might take a couple days off. I've definitely taken up to a week, 2 weeks off from writing, just no writing at all, to get to the bottom of my creative process. Now you said other challenges, which is key too. One of the most important things you need to realize is that when you're writing a book, everybody in the world is going to pretend you're not writing a book. Right?
Yeah.
So what that means is that you should know, or before you even start writing, you have to realize that yes, to you, that book is super important. It's definitely, it's important in general, but it's super important to you. To everyone else, it's not that important.
They don't care.
They don't care, right? So you might even tell, and I tell people, I teach them is, hey, you might say, hey, I'm writing from 7 to 8, right? Until people recognize you as a writer, they're going to keep calling you. They're going to keep texting you. They're going to keep interrupting you with all types. They're going to tell you about the new show that's on TV. They're going to text you about everything about your book, right? They're going to text you anything that's not about your book. They're going to text you about. So those are the challenges that one faces greatly during the writing process.
Man, I think writing is not just therapeutic, but it's almost therapy.
Definitely.
Because you get a chance to air out your grievances and in a way where you can articulate what bothers you. Because with social media over the last 10 years, you went from writing long, like wordy posts that nobody got the message of. And it's like, I got to find a different way to get this message out because it's important. Other people see that it's important. They reinforce it. And then you go get it packaged up in a way where after you fight through your own insecurities about it and gain the confidence that it takes to, see it through to completion, that even after you do it, people just think it just happens out of midair. You know what I'm saying? And they think that, since you already do it, they don't realize that they violating your boundaries. But unless, you're willing to go disconnect and turn off everything and go somewhere and just write and, and be in a place where you can't be accessible.
Right.
Then nobody can understand it, So the challenge of like the writer's block, I think it's like par for the course. It's about what do I want to turn off and what am I trying to turn on in my head, to get me tapped in. Because when you get going, you visualize yourself just on the keyboard and not letting it go, So yeah, man, the other challenges that arise during the writing process, sometimes it's just other people. And really, if you, as a writer, when you individually take accountability, is your accessibility to other people.
Correct.
Yeah. So
absolutely,
I appreciate you acknowledging that, man. That's pretty dope. So, because these are things, I've never had a consult on writing a book. I just did it. So hearing somebody else, kind of like we were talking about the 48 laws and not reading it in its entirety.
Right.
I'm getting pieces that I already knew for myself, but somebody else is verbalizing it. That's
right.
That lets you know when you're on your path and on your purpose. We'll move on to question number 6. All right. How do you approach character development in your stories, and what techniques do you use to create compelling and memorable characters?
Great question. So people have different ways of going about character development. I think for me, before I write the story, I think about the characters. I think about their strengths and weaknesses right away. Mm-hmm. Right? I think that's most important in my opinion. I think you have to give your characters limitations up front to make them realistic. Mm-hmm. And I think if you want a great story, then you have to look at what's the limitations on each character, because that'll tell you, how great your story could be. So every character is not going to have patience. No. Right? Every character is not going to be this jolly, good to go person all the time. Sometimes characters are going to be angry. Sometimes characters are going to be emotional. Sometimes characters are going to be lost, right? And you have to get to the bottom of that to have a great story. So character development to me is about knowing what's a character's strength, what's their weakness. One character might have the capacity of patience, right? The other character might not. That's something that you have to show the contrast between in the story to convey a great story. I think character development also is about digging into why each character is the way they are. So when you talk about, one character might have a backstory of, childhood failure, abuse, and that's why they are the way they are now. You might need to do a flashback on each character, right? To tell a little bit about why they are. So you'll place certain things within the story to say, oh, that one time when I was 16, I did such. Yeah. Or, whatever, something in college, something, it might be traumatizing, it might not. Sometimes it might be a breakthrough moment as well. So I think those are the foundations of character developments. Like I said, when I do character development, I take one page and I write notes. I write at least a page. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that for each character they have their own page, and I write notes until that page is full of that character. So there might be personality traits, might be a backstory, might be, things, it might be their own goals that they're trying to achieve. You know what I'm saying? Somebody might have a goal of being more loving. You gotta convey that. Maybe they want to be more loving, but they don't know how to, right? Maybe they have, emotional turmoil inside. Everybody's at war with what? Self. So these are things you have to convey with characters, and don't just start writing the story crazy and thinking, okay, I wrote a great story. Because without you really digging into those characters, you don't have a story.
No, you don't. You got like a lot of surface level Hollywood type of like Tubi movies. No,
man.
Hey, no, ain't no Tubi movies at all. Because you know what I'm saying. Anytime, any way you can get your creative thoughts out, I'm all for it. But like, you don't want to write a book with depth and brevity and have shallow characters that are no more effective in the story than a random social media post. And I think that's the influence of social media in terms of like the writing process and understanding how dynamic each individual character is, because the way we use social media is basically for analytics. It's definitely interaction, but it's analytics too, because somebody's going to give you a different opinion on whatever your thought is that you may not have considered, because people read stories, they either relate to it or they're completely obtuse to it because it's an anecdotal experience, it's an anecdotal opinion, but it still counts to some degree, you know.
Mhm.
So that is very key in character development, because you want to be able to relate to the person that's trying to improve. Like you just said, the breakthrough moments, like everything you just captured in that answer answers a whole lot of questions, you know, because it makes you look at each individual character. Like I do like a personal data sheet on whoever I'm talking about. Like I come up with, like you just said, their goals and dreams, you know, the data where they live, whatever the economic situation is, because that impacts how they move throughout. Because you can't simulate rich characters that don't have money. You know what I'm saying? Unless there's a story on it about them being a fraud eventually, you know?
Right.
Because that's the end item. You see the end. And you know how you want to reach your reader. And that's about knowing your audience. And that makes you have to be more deliberate about telling the story of each individual character and how they shape the overall picture, which is not easy to do all the time.
Absolutely.
But it's necessary. The things that's necessary ain't usually easy.
There it is. Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. Because like nobody wants to get up and go walk through wet grass to put the trash on the curb, but you really don't want to load up the garbage can and go find out where to go dump it either.
Exactly.
Pick your poison.
Pick your heart.
Yeah, for real. Pick your heart. How do you research and gather information for your writing projects, particularly if you're writing about a topic or setting that you're not familiar with?
Another great question. So people have their own way.
I'm going to answer a lot of these questions the way that you answer them, like off the bat. So this is really good.
So people have their own way of doing research. Some people immediately dive right into other books, you know, books that have a lot of data, a lot of stats. And I'm not here to hate on that. You know, definitely need that as well. I think that's a component of it. I think for me, the top thing that I do is I love one-on-one interviews with experts in that field or topic, right? So when I wrote The Day She Learned Chess, which is for women, I spoke with a lot of people about the different subjects. So one of the things that I talked about is mother-daughter relationships. So I got an expert who did write a book about that. We had a very, very in-depth conversation that was very insightful. The things that I didn't even know were not even knowledge of about mother-daughter relationships and dynamic, and why there's a breakdown in society regarding a lot of mother-daughter relationships. So my top way is I identify 5 to 10 different people on the subject that I want to attack, you know, and I'm saying, and I basically try to pin down, okay, out of this 5 to 10, who can I realistically meet up with I'm gonna try for all 10, but who can I realistically meet up with and get to the bottom of, you know, answer my questions. Mm-hmm. That, and of course they'll have credentials. They'll definitely be quoted. You know, I'll give them their rightful place. But the most important thing is that they're going to tell me something that I could not get exactly from another book.
I love objective analysis. I like not knowing everything. I like thinking that my idea can be destroyed. So whatever your preconceived notions are, until you sit down and meet with a subject matter expert about something, you don't fully buy into it. You just buy into the theory, the concept, but you go into it hoping that you gain more information that proves what you already knew.
Right.
Wipes it out completely and sends you back to the. I say this all the time, man. Sometimes I don't want to be right. Like the burden of being right and not telling everybody that you're right long before the situation plays out that's only something that a writer can understand. Like we have to go make up other stories to prove the point in some cases. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because how many times if somebody asks you, you know, hey, Jamar, what do you think about this? And then you tell them the facts based on what you understand. It plays out the way that you said it, and then they're mad at you because, you know, like they asked your opinion and you didn't bless off on it with whatever their bias was. You know,
right.
So the objectivity that is required is a humble space to be in, because you could sit down and write something and just because you dedicated 90 straight days to it, you could be wrong.
Right.
You could be so wrong. You could be so imbalanced, and you could really, really shoot yourself in the foot and give yourself another hole to dig out of, because the hole that you have to come out of to even create it is something new. Imagine it getting destroyed after being published, you know? Oh man. No, you got to be right. So, which goes back to one of the points you made before. You write for a specific audience, and you deliver the chicken sandwich that's being requested.
Yeah, exactly.
But you put your own sauce on it. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. You gonna get the chicken sandwich, but don't question how it pulls up.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the chicken sandwich, but it's gonna be my sauce.
Yep.
You know, my specialty, my whatever. But at the end of the day, you'll know, oh wow, I can see why he did what he did.
Absolutely. And for creative thinkers, sometimes it takes a book to explain the whole, mentality behind the words you use, because on social media, you can only use maybe 3 to 4 sentences to hold anybody's attention,
right.
Engage them. So you got to make sure, again, the sniper talk, you got to use the most concise, amount of words and the least amount of sentences to get the person to talk. So
right.
Reverse engineering the conversation is what we do. That's what books are for. That's what I think.
Exactly.
What advice would you give to aspiring writers who are just starting out in their careers?
Oh, wow. I think top thing for me, when I became an author officially, or when I definitely made the firm decision to make an author, two things. Well, it's 2 parts, a 2-part answer, really. Number 1 is don't listen to anybody who say you can't be an author. Right. And I'm not going to go into the whole story, but in so many words, I was dating.
It's your platform, man. You tell the story you want to tell, man. You know what I'm saying?
I've told this story on my Facebook, but essentially, I was dating a woman, and we the relationship as far as us was okay, but as far as her parents, things were kind of dicey at times. Unfortunately. And so it was around the Christmas time that, I was at her parents' place, and, everyone was having fun or whatever, drinking or etc. And then we were going around basically, and everyone was saying their goals for the new year, right? So everyone was going around saying their new goals. Now, this is right when I had decided, all right, I'm gonna be an author. I'm gonna start writing, start taking it serious. Well, what happened was when it was my turn, I said, I decided I'm going to write a book next year for sure. And people were like, oh, wow, okay. That's a very ambitious goal. So for the most part, everyone was showing love, but unfortunately, one of her family members flat out said, you can't do that. Right?
Yeah.
And he went in. He said, you can't be an author. You don't have the credentials. You don't have the name. No one knows who you are. You're not famous. How can you succeed at writing a book? How will you finish? And he was dead ass serious, And of course, everybody in the room was just super quiet. And you can imagine it went from a very festive mood to a very serious
big hate That's what it is. Just call it what it is. It's just big hate, man. You know what I'm saying? So
right, big hate. And I'm going to be very real with you and real with your audience, because I think they deserve authenticity. Is I let that moment freeze me up. Unfortunately, I let that moment speak to my soul. And for a long time, I thought I couldn't write a book. His thoughts penetrated me, unfortunately, in my head to say, hey, maybe he's right. No one knows who you are. No one knows, no one knows your name. I mean, you haven't wrote a book before. So why would you start now? You didn't go to school for journalism. The list goes on, man.
It's just
as you could imagine, anyway, in the moment, like I said, I was so shocked that he said this to me. He was so, bold, and he was so, he just knew for sure, like, hey, you need to give that up. You don't need to be a writer. You need to do something else. So I'm telling your audience, I'm encouraging your audience tonight, very strongly. Don't let anyone tell you can't be a writer. Don't let your lack of experience stop you from being a writer, right? Mm-hmm. Don't let that you didn't go to a prestigious school for writing stop you from being a writer. No one can tell you that you can't be a writer. If you want to write. That's simple, right? It's
really that simple.
It's really that simple. Now, like I said, that moment stopped me. It did. Got to be real. And I began to have all these doubts and go through this process of, man, maybe I should just give it up and go do something else or turn to another direction. Eventually, this is why the first book is so important. Eventually, I gained my supernatural confidence back, and I started to write the first book. Slowly but surely, I started to gain it back. And that's why what you said is so important about therapy. Writing is therapy, right? Because when I was writing that book, it wasn't like I had all the confidence in the world when I first started, right? I lacked a little confidence, but as I started to write more and more, as I started to do the process, I said, I can do this. I can do this. I can finish this. I'm a writer. And anyone who's watching this tonight, look in the mirror and say, I'm a writer. I'm an author. I'm an artist. I know who I am. And I'm going to finish my mission and what I got to do, because that's what I had to do. And once I made that firm decision, like I said, I became a beast and I started writing. I wasn't going to let anyone deter me from my goal of completing a book and I gave myself the title of published author. I didn't wait for someone else to give it to me, right? That's super important as well. Now, that's the first answer. The second answer is, hey, when you decide to be a writer, there's going to be so many people pulling you in different directions. There's going to be so many people saying, go to this conference, go to this event, go to this. You're going to be that. And that's a mistake I made. I went to so many events, wasted so much time talking to two people who didn't have my best interests, right? So I was buying all types of little programs and, how to be an author workshops. And, basically it was a waste of time. It's so crazy. That's why I have so much valuable knowledge now to teach other people not to make the same mistakes I did. But I want to tell all the writers out there, if you're brand new, you brand spanking new, or you might have been doing it for maybe a year or so, is stop going to every event. Stop feeling like, oh, if I don't go to this event, people not going to know who I am. No, it's not about that. It's about you. It's about your art. It's about what you write about. It's about, can you convey being authentic in your message or whatever you're trying to accomplish? If you do that to the best of your ability, trust me, people are going to slowly know who you are, want to mess with you, want to do business with you, etc. The list goes on.
I love the way you articulated that message. I have a very succinct phrase that I like to say, or to capture that. I don't take constructive criticism from people that never constructed anything.
There it is.
Most people are in position to criticize another human being and what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, If you are in position to criticize, but you aren't producing anything, you that much less relevant.
Exactly.
So if you haven't constructed anything, you are not in position to criticize anything. You know what I'm saying? You have to start, and people don't understand completion. When you really think about it, right? Like you're 36, right?
36. Yeah.
36. I'm 44. Most people haven't completed anything since high school.
Oh man, I got a saying that says high school's forever.
Hey, it is like, and then after that, the next major completion is going to be somebody completing college. But if you completed college and you're not working in the field, what did you do with the time? You know what I'm saying? It's no different than us writing 1,000 rough drafts on something and never completing it and publishing it. You know, it's just a book around with dust on it, sitting to the side somewhere. You know,
right?
So you got to complete something, and until you complete anything, you're probably not in a position to criticize anybody about that. Go do what your passion directs you to do. That's your purpose. So I appreciate that message right there. Let's move on to question 9. What did you do with the time? You know what I'm saying? It's no different than us writing 1,000 rough drafts on something and never completing it and publishing it. You know, it's just a book around with dust on it, sitting to the side somewhere. You know,
right?
So you got to complete something, and until you complete anything, you're probably not in a position to criticize anybody about that. Go do what your passion directs you to do. That's your purpose. So I appreciate that message right there. Let's move on to question 9. What are you working on currently, and what can readers expect from your upcoming projects?
Yes, so this year I am working on my 4th book. It's called The Power of Self, Unapologetic Masters of Manifestation. This book will be out in November, later this year. So going through the process right now, actually, as we speak. But this book will be mainly about, looking inward, looking at who you are, and basically asking a lot of key questions about life. Why do people like what they like? Why are we attracted to what we're attracted to? Why do we do the stuff that we do? So, of course, it won't answer these questions necessarily on a wide scale. It's mainly about asking you why you do what you do. And then once you know why you do what you do, you're able to, help direct, or you're able to less the BS of what others do, right? When you don't know who you are, then people can direct you into a lot of different directions. People can tell you who you are when you don't know who you are. So that's why I call it the power of self, because once you realize that self-power, then no one can come to you and say, hey, here's who you are. They can't, blow up and do all types of dumb magic tricks to misconceive you.
That's like the unpacked way of saying, I'm not going to let anybody box me in, because like you have to change, you have to adapt in order to stay relevant. And by relevance, we're not just talking about popularity, we're talking about being applicable. Because a lot of people that have a ton of information, but no different than, knowing some details out of the farmer's almanac. The information is valuable, but is it applicable to what the current discussion is?
Right.
What you don't want to do is write yourself into a box. And then, different than a typecast character, because I think of things like, how successful can I be at this? Because like, what if it's a hit? What if it gets picked up by somebody that takes the excerpt out of the book and they say, Jamar, I got your book, or because you're accessible. Somebody can go right on social media, inbox you. Like, you don't even ask for phone numbers anymore. They say, what's your IG?
Right.
So you can be found very quickly, especially if you got your name on a few different things. But yeah, so the ability to not get boxed in is very critical. And that is an ability too, because you could easily let people define your path and never get out of the path that they put you on.
Right.
You look crazy. It's no different than like you take comedians that try to make it in Hollywood as actors, and you only see them as just being funny. You never take them seriously.
Right. Exactly.
So it's important that you know, like, I guess it's about maneuvering your pieces, because one thing supports others. And then like, I'm kind of like where you are, and I should have written 4 books by now, but I've had to stop on a couple things because I do real estate, you know, and I'm working on the merch, the podcast, to be able to have conversations like that. You have to get out of your box sometimes, because you already have a box that you're in and nobody else knows.
Right.
But they don't get to put you in that box. You get to direct traffic from your box.
Exactly.
Yep. So man, look, man, the supernatural confidence, the, you know, like the self-help books, the and the, what do you call it, the manifestation of
unapologetic masters of manifestation.
Unapologetic it's a tongue twister. It got me, you know. Yeah. So the whole nature of it is like becoming your own. You have to become your own creator. Mm-hmm. You have to like look at yourself from a 30 to 60,000 foot view and direct yourself on the chessboard on what you want to go do. You can't just do it from, you know, like right in front of you. Sometimes you're too close to it. So I get it. All right, hit the last question right here. Criticism or negative reviews of your work, and what strategies do you use to stay motivated and continue producing new writing?
Woo, man, this could be a show
by itself, right? Hey, look, that's why you got to come back. You know what I'm saying? So like, I want to be able to feature you on all of your work. And to anybody that's watching this, these are the type of questions, because we want to create true connectivity and understanding with the artist in whatever their work might be, because this is what the goal should be, is to take social media, create a real community out of it, and share each other's talents.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is a multi-layered question. It's not a simple question. Right. At the end of the day, you're still a human, right? You're still going to react to things. You're still going to have certain sentiments, right? You, as Erykah Badu said, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say that when I'm criticized heavily on my work, the top thing I do is I have to objectively say or ask myself, is what the person's saying is true? Is it facts? Right? Is it facts? Even though it is an opinion, right? Can I use it to my advantage? I think that's number one, right? After I answer that question, I have to say, is this person saying this because they're triggered? If they're saying it from a triggered standpoint, then it kind of dilutes their answer or their criticism, right? I can't be responsible for what you're triggered by.
Nope.
Right? That's not my job. My job is to put out the message, and you learn from it what you learn from it. You take from it what you take from it. Right? So I think those are the two main things I do. Especially when someone goes hard in the paint, you know, and trust me, I get bad feedback sometimes, mainly positive, but every once in a while, for sure, I get, you know, someone goes in, write a whole dissertation, you know, whole PhD program. So with that said, I asked, okay, is this person answering this from an objective standpoint or trigger? Like someone said for my book, When Men Were Men, they loved it. They really loved it, right? But you know how it is. They said, I wish you would have included just a little bit more research, right? He said that. So I went back in the book. You know, obviously I know the book, I wrote it, but I went back through certain things And I just made a mental note of saying, okay, possibly I could have included a little bit more research, possibly, and I left it alone. But but the versus another situation where I had wrote something, and about the woman's book, and then the woman went on a personal tirade about something that was going on in her life, right? She wrote, "I've been through this. I've been through
therapy for."
Exactly, right? Something that she personally went through that I had nothing to do with, right? So in that case, it's not objective. It's personal. It had nothing to do with me. If anything, maybe my book should serve as the spark for your betterment. But she didn't take it that way. She took it as, oh, you personally are talking about me and my story. So I think that's my look at it. I think if you're an artist of any kind, no, people are going to negatively react to your work. They're going to. It is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. At the end of the day, you have to say, okay, is this person coming from an objective, realistic point of view, or are they personally, telling you their story or testimony or whatever, and saying you're talking about me, you put me down, etc. And the strategies, I mean, each book I definitely go through, and I just look at what I could have done better, and I just use it for next time. So the Power of Self is coming out in November. The things I learned from Supernatural Confidence, I'm using to write this book. The mistakes I might have made in When Men Were Men, I'm using for this book. The things I might have had to tweak in The Day She Learned Chess, now the Power of Self gets to benefit from. So each book gets stronger. Definitely chase your dreams, chase your passions, but most importantly, know who you are. That's going to answer a lot of questions. Know where you're going, right? We have a lot of things in society that influence us. They tell us to, you need to be this way, you need to be that way. And that's part of the bigger issue going on with a lot of people. And that's why a lot of people are unfortunately depressed, right? Because they're trying to fit in, they're trying to be accepted, they're trying to do this. I wanted to be an author. I told earlier the story about someone telling me, you can't be an author. They said, you don't have a name, you're not famous, you don't have the credentials, you don't have the people, you don't have the backing. They told me those things, and for a short while, I let it get to me, and I let it, deter me from my goal. But eventually, I gained my self-power back, and I realized that I can do this. I don't need all the things that particular person was telling me that I need. All I really needed was my supernatural confidence, and I gained that. Writing is therapeutic. All the writers out there, all the artists out there, be encouraged. Don't worry about what everybody's saying. Anyone who's negative in your life right now, you really need to get rid of anyway. Because all that person is going to do is just keep being negative. They're never going to stop being negative. In fact, as you become more successful or as you gain more progress, they're going to keep being more negative towards you. Then they're going to resent you. Just telling you the truth and how that really goes. So once again, thank you so much for listening to me. My name is JC, Jamar Camper. Of course, you can reach me on Facebook, Intellectual Sniper, author JC.